Stop it.
How's it going, guys? Don, you're muted. You're muted, sir.
Yes, you are.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Was I muted?
You was. Yes, you were.
Huh. Okay. We are live. Okay. How's everyone doing tonight? I really can't see the chat. I'm on a phone tonight, so if you guys could help me out with the chat, Dave, or any questions that come through the chat, just kind of point them out. Tonight we
Sure
have
thing.
Jimmy Mitchell from Ghost Quest. It's a YouTube channel, and you have a Facebook also?
I do. Yeah, and it's also Ghost Quest over there. I believe Ghost Quest HQ is the actual the tag or whatever. And same thing with YouTube. It'd be Ghost Quest HQ because there is a Ghost Quest TV and they're British based. Not the same people.
Okay. I thought it sounded familiar when I first heard it. So tonight we have a special co-host. I guess I'm hosting tonight, Dave from California,
Oregon.
Oregon. Okay, how you doing,
Oregon.
Dave?
I'm
And,
doing good, sir. How are you tonight?
Good, doing good. And Jimmy, I met Jimmy kind of a strange way. I was looking for somebody else, and everything was leading me to Jimmy's videos. And then I got in touch with Jimmy when we started talking. He explained, and I'm sure we're going to talk about the gentleman I was trying to get a hold of and his situation. If anybody follows any ghost videos on YouTube and shadow people and all that, you have probably seen this other gentleman's videos. So that's why I was originally trying to get a hold of him, but I couldn't find any contact information for him. And everything was leading me to Jimmy, and Jimmy had just completed a documentary about this gentleman who doesn't live too far from me up in Maine here. So I guess we'll start off with that. Just your experience there. We don't have to mention names and places and stuff. I'm sure most people are going to be able to figure it out.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I thought the whole thing was pretty interesting, the way you went about the documentary. Now, you when you went into that investigation, what were your thoughts on the situation? You had probably seen the videos that he had put out, right?
Oh yeah. I knew what I had done my research. Well, just enough to be like, I've seen the guy on Nuke's Top 5, and his videos, the shadow people videos, they become very, very, very well known. Definitely, if you've seen anything about shadow figures, they almost always use videos that belong to this guy. But at the time, he was still kind of brand new. He had just kind of he'd been on YouTube for a couple of years, but he had really hit his big break, if you will. Getting on all these different top 5s. And I come from being over all of the fake stuff. I believe in paranormal. I've had experiences. I don't know what it is. I don't know what ghosts are, but I believe that there's something to that. And seeing all the fake stuff out there just got me to where it's like they aren't helping anything. The only thing that they're helping is their bank. You know what I mean? They're helping their wallet, and that's pretty much it. And I had gotten to this point where I was just like, look, like, if I'm going to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, I hope it's real. I think it might be. This guy seemed very salt of the earth, very blue collar type. He appeared to be the least likely candidate for somebody that would have a YouTube channel, especially something dealing with ghosts. And it was intriguing to me. So thanks, Sean. So I contacted him, and we spoke on the phone, and we set up a date for me to come out there, which was in January of 2020. It was right before the world caught fire. And I drove from Indiana all the way out to Maine, 1,200 miles, just from the end of my driveway all the way to the hotel. And you know, I'm driving alone. I'm driving in silence. I didn't even listen to music because on the ride up, I'm prepping. You know, I really want this to be real. Really want this to be real. You know, but if it isn't, then I have to be prepared to show that. You know, I mean, this is a documentary after all, and I have to show where the story takes me, you know.
Come on.
So I guess I just got to I got there, and once I started talking to the guy, and I started listening to his stories, and there were a bunch of things that I couldn't confirm. My suspicions kind of went up, you know. But at the same time, you know, I don't mean to be long-winded, but at the time, there were things happening that I didn't know were happening. Like I was capturing EVPs, I was capturing audio disturbances, things that I didn't know were there until I went home and reviewed the footage. So it was very, what's the word? Underwhelming, you know, because there were some things that did happen. Like in the moment, I heard voices in the room with us aloud. Like I heard them, my partner heard them. And there were times that we heard them that Kent did not hear them. I said his name. That's going to happen. I apologize. I've been speaking about this so openly.
It's okay.
It's hard for me to
it's okay
to filter everything. But he didn't hear them, you know. But there were also times that he would hear things that I didn't hear. There was just a bunch of suspicion going on, you know, a suspicion. But at the same time, we're experiencing. So, you know, this is exciting. What's going on? What's next? What's going to happen? And then the more I dug, the more certain things started kind of coming together about maybe the angle of this particular person and what he was after, you know. I'm done talking now. I'll let you guys kind of interject here as a good guest. As a good guest, I will do my best.
What I found interesting in that documentary is I'm a Bigfoot investigator, and a lot of the same process is the same as what you were doing, listening to the stories. And I never call anybody out for, you know, lying. It's always afterwards when I think back and I look back at everything, and then I go, geez, this doesn't make sense, or this doesn't make sense. But
Right.
the process I noticed, and a lot of the things you do, some of the same things like I look for, like people moving back and forth if they're pulling something and stuff like that. But
yeah.
So when you when you got there, did you pick up anything right away? Any of the EVPs, or because how many days were you there?
I was there for 3 days, and it was, you know, it wasn't 3 solid days. I wasn't staying at his house or anything like that because his wife lived there, and I believe his daughter was there with her little boy at times. They were in and out, but the first night we were there, it was just Kent and I. But we were there for maybe about between, I would say, 7 to 9 hours each night. You know, we were there for that, probably about that amount of time during 3 days. So I only spent probably max 18 to 19 hours there, if that math adds up. I wasn't there for 72 hours. I would have loved that. I would have loved to have stayed the night there. But of course, this is where his family was living, and I'm not gonna, I'm not going to put them out. And his wife was she absolutely hates the whole thing. She hates the strangers coming into their house from all over the world. She wasn't really into it. She was nice enough, but she, again, it was just one of those things where I'm in somebody else's house. As far as picking things up, you mean like feelings? Is that what are you asking me to describe stuff like that? Or?
Yeah, like when did you first notice something strange that may have been really going on in the house? Was it right away, or did it take some time being there?
It took time. Now, so I grew up in a house that kind of had a vibe, right? And there were things that happened to me in that house and stuff. And I grew up with that vibe just around me all the time. And so my brain associates that feeling with being at home. So when I got to his house, I did feel that, it was kind of like, oh, I kind of felt at home. So I associated that with, there might be something here. But again, we're talking about impressions, and impressions can be wrong, right? And especially feelings, we get things wrong all the time. But it wasn't until I heard the voices like in the room with us where I was like, what just happened? I mean, I had never experienced hearing voices coming from nowhere like that. And when I say nowhere, you can't pinpoint where you heard it from, right? Like you heard it and it's like, I think it was in that direction, maybe, but somebody else might have heard the same thing. And I was like, no, I heard it from over there. I heard it from over there, and I have theories on why that might be a thing that happens. But yeah, it wasn't until I heard voices where I was like, there might actually be something going on here. And that was on the second day. But Luke heard, and that's my partner. Luke heard them on the first day. Our first night there, he heard something. And Luke is also hard of hearing. And I had to, I don't know if, what Luke actually did hear. I don't, and there, again, I took time on my fourth episode of the documentary to kind of logically look at all of the evidence. And is there a way that these things could be explained with reasonable and natural occurrences? Because the last conclusion that you should be making when it comes to a ghost hunt is that was paranormal. That's got to be the last thing you've got to go through and debunk, because otherwise you're fooling yourself and potentially fooling other people, your followers, your viewers, people who look up to you and stuff like that. And I know nobody wants to do that on purpose. Well, there are people who do want to do that on purpose, but if you're really, really in this field for the right reasons, which is looking for answers, you want to make sure that what you're presenting is solid, as solid as you can conclude. You know what I mean?
So I got a question for you, and thank you for coming on, Jamie. I appreciate it too, man. And
sure.
So probably a question a lot of people in chat would ask: Does it scare you at all, kind of delving into this subject? And are you kind of worried that maybe it might get out of hand, or or like follow you home in a bad way or anything like that?
Yeah, I have a little boy. He's 6 years old. He's the one that I care about the most. Like, he is my entire world. So yeah, I do worry about things like that. I do. But at the same time, it seems to me that the signs in life that say this is what you're supposed to be doing are kind of lit up in neon to me right now. And I would tell you, I've wandered the earth for about 43 years wondering what the hell it is I'm supposed to be doing. And so I would say that it seems right to me that this is something that I'm supposed to be doing, so yeah, there are risks, there are fears, but if we allow those things to condemn us to nothing, then that's what we will be. You know what I mean?
Very well said.
I appreciate that.
Now, do you have excuse me? Do you have other documentaries on the horizon?
So nothing. Okay. I have some ideas for some things that aren't paranormal related, that are just passion projects. But I am also a part now that this documentary has come out. There's a documentarian named Matt Benton, and Matt Benton did the Harrisville Haunting documentary, which was about the Conjuring House, and that was before really it was. He did that with a guy named Joe Vitale. Oh, excuse me. I want to say the same year, or maybe the year after the Conjuring movie had come out. So this was years ago that they put that together. And they've just put out a new documentary called Evil Unearthed. Well, it's actually just finished, and now it's waiting on distribution. And so I'm now a member of their team called the Paranormal Research Unit, and they're already in pre-production for what the next documentary is about. So as far as paranormal stuff goes, that I am involved in, that right now is the next project, which I don't know when that will be ready, and there's a lot involved with it. So it might be a couple years before that's out. But between now and then, I'll be working on my YouTube channel as doing YouTube videos and stuff like that. Not necessarily full production documentaries on the paranormal, but I have a lot of interests. There's a drummer for a band that I absolutely adore called the Afghan Wigs, lives a couple of states below me. I'd like to go talk with him for about a day and see if I can't make a 30-minute documentary out of him. And then there's a guy named Bill Hickman in Indiana who back in 2012, there was a mass text that went to all kinds of, crazy, thousands upon hundreds of thousands of phones. And it said, God came into my body like a body, my exact same size. And it was just all of this crazy rambling, but somehow intriguing. And the guy that did that, he lives in Indianapolis, not that far away. He's obviously an interesting, eccentric person. And I'd like to go sit down and maybe spend a day or two with him and perhaps do a documentary a bit more on him. That whole story that I just told you about, people have done kind of rabbit hole dives into, but they always stop at figuring out that it's this guy, Bill Hickman. They don't really go, they never go into who he is or why he is the way he is. It's just, it stops there. So I thought about maybe, sitting down with him for a couple of days and just filming him and see what happens,
So how much of your research or what you do is paranormal? Mostly all of it right now?
Right now, yeah. I've been into the paranormal since I was a kid. I used to watch Unsolved Mysteries with my dad. And Unsolved Mysteries isn't Unsolved Mysteries without Robert Stack. I don't care if they use the original theme song or not. Like, you've got to have, But or Sightings was another show, or Beyond Belief, and then there was a show I think in the early 2000s called Fact or Faked, the Paranormal Files. I really enjoyed that. That's actually kind of one of the inspirations for the idea of my breakdowns. I was able to recreate some of the videos that this guy that we've been talking about, that's the subject of the documentary. I was able to actually recreate some of those videos, and that idea came from that show, Fact or Fake. And I also understand that just because I was able to recreate them doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it is. But I also like to stay in the realm of critical and logical thinking. Some people would say I would argue and say I don't think very logically sometimes, but and they may be right. But critically is definitely something that critically I try to be a critical thinker, and Occam's razor. I'm a big advocate for Occam's razor. The most logical explanation is probably the explanation,
Yeah, do you think it was a case of he had a little something going on there and he wanted to make it into a bigger something by creating evidence?
Yes. Yeah, I
Because
think
that
so.
happens a lot. It happens a lot in the Bigfoot world also.
Sure.
You know,
Sure. I think
the
what happens
same.
is they go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think what happens there is they know they're not crazy. They saw something. They just didn't have a camera at the time that they saw it, right? But they know that they saw it. And if they could perhaps recreate what they saw, somehow that makes it real. Do you know what I mean? And it's like maybe to them they're not necessarily putting out misinformation because I did see something like this. I saw this, but again, it doesn't help anything. And I think that happened. I don't have, I'm throwing the guy a bone by saying I think he probably did encounter one of these shadow figures at one time and just didn't have a camera. And then he put something together and people responded to it. And so, well, now I've got attention, and now there's all these subscribers coming in, and this channel is featuring me, and this channel is featuring me. These people want me on their podcast. These people, all this attention, and so then he starts getting into that YouTube grind, right? Which is addicting. It's addicting. How can I one up what I did last week? How can I one up what I did last week? And it just, yeah, I think that's definitely something that happened. But I also think there is a hint of maliciousness behind the guy. I do think that the guy thinks he's smarter than everybody. I do think that he has some narcissistic traits, you know what I mean, that are toxic. And that stuff kind of, the only reason why I'm saying it's not just well, like, I have nothing to back that up with. I mean, there are things that are in the documentary that I think portray that. Now let me ask: have both of you watched the documentary?
I have not personally.
Okay, and you watched?
Yeah,
okay,
I've
so
seen it.
David has not. Dawn, you did. Did you watch all 4 episodes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, so you saw that there are things there that kind of allude to the idea that the guy has some sort of complex, some sort of, or at least that's the way it seems, because he was taking advantage of people. That's what was going on. He was taking advantage of people.
Right.
He was using people for clout. He had a guy in a field digging holes looking for his dead cousin who was murdered by a serial killer that she was married to, because the spirit box is telling him where to dig. These are things that, man,
Yeah.
the documentary
Andy had
started.
all the.
Go
I
ahead.
was going to say he had the props there ready to go. Also,
Yeah, and then that's the thing. I had no idea that any of this was going to go the way it did. I went there looking for ghosts. I went there looking to share this guy's story, and I mean, where it turned, how it turned, and where it went, I couldn't have ever expected. I couldn't have ever expected the amount of drama that was there, or the amount of drama that was going to come my way just by simply learning about these things and talking about them openly. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. And I also have to mention here, I'm signing a distribution, a contract with a distribution company this upcoming week to get this into bigger distribution, to get it in like the what they call VODs, right, which are video on demand. So the subscription based or the free based, all of them, that's happening with this distribution company. So I will have to be taking the documentary down once I sign that. But until then, I will be streaming all 4 episodes back to back on my channel for until I actually sign that contract. I just wanted to throw that out there because I'm sure that there are people that are interested and want to know and may want to see that. So that will be available for the rest of this week.
Nice.
Yeah, and you did a great job with that. I really think you did a good job. You did all the editing on that also.
Yeah, I sure did.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
job.
it took me. Thank you. It took me 4 years.
Wow.
But a lot of that 4 years, I was hanging out, going, "What the heck am I going to do? What am I going to do?" The muse was escaping me in a lot of ways, and I think really what had happened was because there was a whole side of YouTube that I didn't know existed, right? Which is this debunking community. I had no idea that was a thing. I like when I went out there to go to do this, I thought I was paving a path. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until about this time last year that I learned about all these people. And I knew what my message was going to be, but I just didn't know how I was going to say it. And it wasn't until I met all these debunkers that I realized I'm not the one that needs to say it. I need them to say it. Because, during the documentary, I'm the one that's doing most of the talking, right? I'm the one that's doing the talking, And so I've said so much. I think that by the time it was time for that message to be said, if I had said it, it wouldn't have had the impact that it would if I had these other people who are paranormal investigators and debunkers alike telling why they do what they do and what damage fake paranormal evidence does. It's the same sort of situation. Like you're a Bigfoot hunter, right? And you run into people who are faking Bigfoot things, but they're not helping anything. They're looking for attention. They're looking to be famous. They're looking for money. They don't care about the development of and it's something that you're quite passionate about. I assume if you're going to call yourself a Bigfoot hunter, I imagine that you're passionate about it. You want legitimate evidence. You want to know that you're not just chasing your tail, right? And people that do this, that muddy the waters with all this stuff, they make it very much more difficult for the rest of us to believe in our own cause and for other people to take what we do seriously,
Yep.
And it's
what's crazy.
It's just,
What's crazy. I was going to say what's crazy is the hoaxers get more attention than the truth tellers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, because it's entertainment, right?
Yep.
Yep. They're getting actual results or whatever, but they're not actual results. It's just a trick. But that's what people want to see. They want to. If it's boring, which I think probably Bigfoot hunting is probably just as maybe a little bit more exciting than ghost hunting. At least you're outside under the stars and you can, you got fresh air. In a when you're doing paranormal like ghost hunting, you're usually in a broken down building or an old hospital, and there's black mold probably, and but it's also a lot of nothing happening, You're not getting anything, and who wants to watch that? Who wants to watch that? And I think a lot of it can come from laziness too, right? Because I think you can make absolutely nothing entertaining if you're good at presenting stuff. If you want to get better, you can do that. You can make it entertaining and not destroy the credibility of what's going on, not have to fake anything or anything like that. But it's instant stimulation. That's even creators creating this stuff. How do I explain it? They're basically they're stimulating themselves by, the thrill. Is this even going to work? There's so many aspects that, behind somebody who's faking stuff. They probably don't even care if you think it's real or not. They just want those views and they want those subs and they want, those people to buy their merch or any number of ways to collect monetary gain or just attention. Some people, they aren't in it for monetary reasons. They're in it for attention,
So what would you say up
Yeah.
to this point
Ironic.
is your most exciting experience, or the one that stands out the most to you?
So I've had some things happen that aren't in the documentary, that were just kind of my own personal experiences. So I guess for me, the one that sticks out the most was, I have a phone plan that I ruined my credit in my 20s and 30s. Let's just say that. So I have a phone through a family plan with a friend of mine, and he's got a family plan. I pay him X amount of money a month for my phone, and he would come out every month to collect the money. Now, this is back before PayPal was on anything other than eBay. That's how long ago this has been. So, and there was no Facebook Pay or anything like that. So I'm laying in bed. I was expecting him to come to collect the money that day. And I'm laying in bed. My dog is laying in bed with me. I'm reading something, and I hear the back door open. I had given up on the idea that he was coming because it was like after 11 o'clock. Usually he would show up earlier. But I heard the back door open, and I heard them walk through my house, walk through my kitchen, walk all the way in front of my bedroom, and they stopped. And then my dog heard it too, because when the door opened, she's laying in bed and she's just going, woof, woof. Like, hey, there's someone here, but I'm in bed, so I'm not really that worried about it right now. So that let me know that she heard it too. I get up. I'm like, I better put pants on because Josh is here. But I'm like, why isn't he talking? This is weird, because when Josh shows up, I mean, he's very vocal. And I open up the door, and there was no one there. There was nobody in the house. But I heard somebody open that door, walk through the house, and stop in front of my room. And the thing is when I opened that door, I still felt like there was someone there, but I couldn't see anything. I would say, like, out of all of the experiences that I've had, that's the most was it exciting? It was confusing. That seems to be the typical response from me, is what just happened, right? Like, it's not fear, it's not grab the camera, it's what was that? What just happened here, And yeah, I mean, I've had some other things happen as well, but I think that one for me is the one that's like, I'll remember that forever.
So what would you say would be the ultimate goal that you'd want to experience? What would be like the grand finale, if you would, of your expertise?
Well, I think we're all looking to see something, right? I think I saw something when I was really little, but that memory comes from a 2-year-old little boy, and I'm 43 now, so that's 41 years ago that happened. But I would like to see something. Sure, I'd like to see a shadow figure that I can't deny, like it's right there. I think we'd all like to see something like that. I don't know that I'll ever. I have no expectations, right? So I don't expect to see anything or I guess witness anything, but I'm open to allowing it to happen and letting it happen, because if I put too fine a point on something, I'm just setting myself up for disappointment. I think the best thing that I can do is stay calm, stay logical, remain critical, and anything that remains unexplained outside of that is something to get excited about.
There you go. Yeah. We have a question by Patrick Noble here. He's any good EVPs?
I think they're phenomenal EVPs. Yeah. That's the thing. I don't just settle for little bits of like, oh, did you hear that? He said, get out. Like, I don't do that. Sounds from the room, elbows brushing against walls, and all this noise pollution that can be misconstrued or misidentified as something paranormal. I have one, the very first one that I found in the footage was a woman saying, I can't answer you. And it almost sounds exactly like that. I remember when I first played it through the original codec of CS6, there was way more tone to it than what ended up being on the version that you all see today. I don't know what happened with that, if the codec changed, or I don't know. But when I first heard her voice, I can't answer you. It was like my stomach dropped into my lap, because I had thought that I didn't have anything. And then there was just EVP after EVP after EVP during that whole section of that documentary that I really can't explain. Some things I can, like some things, I've learned that friction on a device, on a recording device, can create sounds that sound like voices, and your brain will interpret it as a voice. So some things I was able to kind of debunk, along with my friend Kenny Biddle, who works for the Center for Inquiry. He makes a living out of being a skeptic. He's more of a cynic, if you ask me, but he carries the title of skeptic. And I think through learning more about what can cause an EVP that's normal, that's helped me out quite a bit to determine whether or not, what I'm actually hearing is something worth sharing with everybody. Well, because I don't just grab whatever and just run with it and say, oh, this is an EVP. I'm also open. I still remain open-minded. Like, I could be wrong. Maybe there is another explanation, but as for right now, I don't have any explanation for the EVPs. Most of them on the documentary.
Other than the documentary, do you have other EVPs, other investigations?
Yeah, I did I was after, not very many, but I did do another investigation for a lady who lived in Lebanon, Indiana. She had just moved into this house, and Lebanon, Indiana it's an old little town. And she lived in a house that it's been around since I think 1890, and she was having some strange things happen. So she knew that I was interested in all this, and I came out there with just my audio recorder and a camera, and I messed with the spirit box a little bit over there. But spirit box is one of those things that I don't really put a lot of faith into. I've had some really interesting things happen with it, but at the same time, it is a radio, and you are hearing radio stations. That's just logical thinking, critical thinking, right? But anyway, I captured some EVPs at her house that were really interesting. A woman saying, she said, "What's the date?" So the woman that was there in the house with me, she was the woman that lived there. She was also doing this investigation with me. She wanted to. And I remember she asked, "What's the date?" And you hear a woman respond to her, "What's the date?" Which was really interesting. It was really strange. And it was tonal too. It sounded like it was in the house with us somewhere. Trying to think of there were some others that I haven't watched that in so long. I can't really remember all the stuff that I found on there, but yeah, I've gone around. Actually, there was another EVP one night. So for a long time, I was doing Sunday game night with my friends. So they would come over and we would play games like Uno Flip, or dice. You play 10,000, or we would play just games that don't involve a television. And every Sunday, my friends would come over, and I would, we'd have snacks and we'd play games. And this one night it was myself, my friend Amy, and my friend Shelby. And I'm talking. I don't remember what I was telling. I was telling a story, but my potato chip bag over next to my microwave, I can hear it crinkling. And I'm thinking there's a mouse over there, and it was distracting me. And so I go over. I mean, I go over. I'm walking over. The potato chip bag is still crinkling. And I grab that bag really quick. And I mean, I'm looking, there's no mouse. There's no mouse. And I was like, well, maybe he got away. I don't know. I set the bag back down and we're all watching this bag. And the bag goes like it moved just a little like that. And I was like, that was nuts. So I get out my phone and I'm getting ready to turn on record, and I said, listen, if that's you, if you're actually here, if there's something here doing that, can you move that potato chip bag again? And it goes on command. My friend Amy and Shelby both saw this happen. So then we get our phones out and I put this on TikTok. And I remember saying, like, you guys can't leave me. Like, I'm scared to death right now. I was scared. And you hear a woman. This is strange. At least I think it's a woman anyway. I mean, it could be whatever. But you hear a voice go, watching you. And this was all right in that, that chain of events there. So, yeah, I've had other things. I've had EVPs and so that's the thing. To me, EVPs are like that's a strong case. If you can't figure out other explanations for the EVPs that are logical and recreate them, that's the other thing. I totally believe in the recreating. Can I recreate this? And you don't have to do it in the moment. You know what I mean? You can do it at any time. If it's possible to be recreated, it doesn't matter where you are. So you can, if you can recreate it, do it. And then, anything that you're left with afterwards, then that becomes something very interesting. And EVPs to me are phenomenal pieces of evidence. They're the next best thing to like, a full-on apparition, in my opinion.
So Riley's asking a question. Are there any good demons in your opinion?
Good demons. No, but I also don't know that every bad spiritual energy is a demon. Or I wouldn't say bad, but let's say, because there's all these stories about elementals, right? Or fairies, the fae. Yeah. The fae were tricksters. Yeah. They would play tricks on you just because it was fun, right? And that sounds an awful lot to me like the same kind of activity that you get with poltergeist activity, right? They're just messing with you for fun. And I wonder if they're one and the same, or elementals, are they, what even are they? How is it possible that there are ancient spirits that aren't demons or angels? How is that possible? Because the Bible doesn't say anything about stuff like that, right? And I wonder, like, is an ancient what happens to a ghost that's just been a ghost for so long it loses any sense of its human self that it used to have? Is that what those are? I don't know. I don't even know that ghosts are the spirits of dead people. I mean, again, the Bible does talk about ghosts and it says that that's what they are, and it could be. But what if it's something just that's alive? Let's just say it's some sort of sentient creature that isn't biological, that's from here, has been here. I'm not saying that's what it is, but I think that that's just as good an explanation as ghosts. But when it comes to demons, yeah, demons are inherently, they're not good. It's not something that you want to have around. They're also rare. If you're watching people, if you're watching these ghost hunters, and every week, demon in the title, I'm sorry to break it to you, but that person is lying to you. That person is misleading you, or at the very least misleading themselves, because demons,
more entertaining.
Yeah, they're not that common. it seems to be a very rare thing that demons would even just like, I don't know. It's just not something that happens very often.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that about not knowing not knowing if they're ghosts for sure, these entities that people are seeing, these shadow people. And I've often thought that too. Like, what are they? Could they be something in a different dimension, somehow bleeding through? Or are
Right.
they here in this dimension and that is their form?
Right.
Yeah, because right. I mean, after we die, the story is you're hanging around for a couple days and then you go away. You go to the light, you know.
Right.
And you hear a lot of people talk about how these shadow spirits are bound ghosts, bound to the earth. And it really never made much sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, no one knows. Like that's just a thought someone had, that these shadow spirits are bound to the earth. That's just a thought someone had. We're not going to use the word theory because theory implies science, and let's just face it, like when it comes to paranormal, science is pretty elusive, right? There's a lot of things that just don't make sense scientifically, and we can't measure it with science. But that's not to say that there aren't perhaps answers in science that we just haven't discovered yet either. Ways to measure whatever these things are. That just isn't something that we can do yet. And I do use the word yet because I think it's possible that if there is a science behind it, then perhaps we should be able to stumble on that somehow. But yeah, I don't know what ghosts are. I know that I've had some really interesting experiences that lead me to believe that there is something going on that we just can't explain yet.
So there's a question for you. Do you think that there's any connection between Bigfoot and like shadow people? Like some people think there are.
I don't know that I believe in Bigfoot. I don't know that I don't believe in it. It's just, to me, I do think that out of all the cryptids, Bigfoot is probably the most likely to exist. As far as it being some sort of paranormal being, I would say it's probably a flesh and blood kind of creature, I don't do a lot of Bigfoot research. I listen to the stories. I know one of my favorite YouTubers is a guy called Bob Gimlin, which that's not his real name, but he tells stories about Bigfoot. He has great art as well. I also know who Les Stroud is, and I enjoy watching the stuff that he's done. I don't get the vibes from that guy that he's trying to put one over on anybody, because he was a survivalist. That's where it started out. He was a survivalist, and then he stumbled into the field.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But anyway, back to the question of whether or not Bigfoot and shadow people are connected. I don't have anything that suggests that's a reality, but I can't say no either, because again, I don't really know enough about the subject to make that kind of claim. I know what I think Bigfoot perhaps could be, but again, I'm not sold on the idea that it actually exists. I'd love for that though. I mean, I would love, I would love for there to be a Bigfoot. And I mean, I've seen some really interesting things as far as that goes, video wise anyway, stuff that I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And, I pay attention to stuff like that, but yeah, I just don't know.
Yeah. Yes. Seeing is definitely believing in that subject. I mean, I believed Bigfoot could exist, but when I saw one, it just hit me. It still hit me like a ton of bricks that they were real.
Right.
You know?
That's incredible.
I guess it would be the same with the ghost thing too, though. I mean, you'd really have to see it to believe it.
Yeah, you have to encounter something. You know what I mean? I mean, not everybody's that way. You know, there are a lot of impressionable people out there who, you know, and I'm not saying that's bad necessarily or anything like that, but there are people out there who believe who haven't seen. You know what I mean? Like those people exist. But yeah, for me, I want something a little bit more substantial. You know, something that I can capture, or even if I didn't capture it, you know what I mean? But then I think I would fall into the whole category of like forever chasing it with a camera afterwards, right? Because if you see it without having the camera, especially if you're a documentarian and that's what you're supposed to be doing, oh man, I missed my opportunity, you know? So then, you know, I would be chasing it for the rest of my life probably.
So there's another question for you. What is the scariest encounter experience that you've ever had?
Well, so I used to live in this house by myself, and the house I had the abstract title to that house dating all the way back from when John Quincy Adams sold the property to a guy named John Claypool. John Quincy Adams was one of the first 5 presidents, maybe. I don't remember when he was around, but anyway, he was a president of the United States, and he sold this land to this guy. I lived in the house was built, I think, in the early 1900s, and I was learning about recording. So I'm a musician, and so I was in my house, and I remember I was in the bathroom because I didn't have any. This was all analog stuff, so I didn't have an analog reverb rack mounted system or anything like that. So I went into the bathroom to use real reverb, and I'm singing. And the thing about this, I was using an 8-track recorder that it was an 8-track Tascam Porta Studio, and it took a cassette. And when you would push record and play on this thing, you would hear the microphone sort of kind of close in a bit, and whenever you would turn off the recording, you'd hear that microphone open back up. And I remember I stopped the recording, and that microphone opened back up, and a room has a sound to it. There's a hiss, and underneath of that hiss, I could hear voices, right? And I'm like, am I just hearing, is this audio pareidolia? What's going on? You know, and I couldn't really tell what they were saying, but I could tell that there was at least 1 or 2 men, and there was a woman talking too, and they were talking to each other. And I just said, I can hear you. And they stopped talking. And one of them said, he can hear us. And that, I threw my headphones off because I'm all alone in this house by myself, dude. And I mean, and it's in the middle, like it's at like 3:30 in the morning. I live in a very quiet, well, at the time, the house is in a very quiet town, a farm town. Everybody's in bed. There was no, I don't even think the bar existed anymore. There was nobody around. And it was, like I said, it was underneath of the hiss of the room. Wow. So that freaked me out. That freaked me out pretty good. You know, because it was just like, what was that? That was either the government is listening to me, or that was a ghost. You know, I mean, though that's the way I still don't know what it was, but yeah, that was pretty intense.
That's intense for sure. So our friend Blackie wants to know. Sorry, Don.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say, analog has a lot of things like that happen too. I built a little radio, like a Radio Shack radio, and I hooked it up to a sound amplifier, and I didn't know where to hook it. So I just started connecting wires. And next thing I know, I'm listening to the intercom system of a hospital about 3 miles from me.
Wow.
Yeah, this is in 1978. You know, so you can do some funny things with analog. You can actually pick up phone lines. If you get close enough to the phone lines, you can pick up a conversation right? Like
Right.
picking it up with like a radio.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Wow.
Yeah.
love analog. I'm not much into the digital. Everything I have here is analog.
Yeah. Well, just the fact that it responded, he can hear us, means that
Yeah.
they could hear me.
Whoa.
You know what I mean? So that's yeah. I mean, it
That's
could
kind
have
of
been.
personal, huh? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it could. I don't think
you
I didn't
didn't
have a
say it.
phone line to the house, so I don't know, but it could have been. Go ahead. I didn't mean to talk over you.
I was gonna say you didn't say you can hear them that loud either, did you?
No, I did. I mean, I didn't shout it. I just said it like I said here. I said, I can hear you. That's exactly how I said it. And they stop talking, and it goes, he can hear us. And I was just like, yeah, like what? Well, yeah. I threw the headphones off and was like, I don't want any more. I don't even want to finish my song right now. I'm scared,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So
yeah, let's go ahead.
Blackie,
Yeah.
Blackie's asking you, what do you think the difference is, if you think there's a difference between ghosts and shadow people?
So this kind of goes into my thoughts about why you see a ghost at all. They probably are the same. They probably are just the same thing. I can go along with that, Blackie. I am not convinced. So I don't think let's just say that ghosts are the spirits of dead people. Let's just say that's what they are. I don't think that means that there is an invisible person with hands, arms, and legs, and a head and a torso, an invisible person walking around your house. I don't think that's what you're dealing with. I believe that it's potentially some sort of ball of energy, for lack of a better term, some sort of energy based core, that is the actual entity itself. And that when it's in your house, your entire house is now the body of this spirit. Okay. And it is omnipresent in the home. If you're up, it doesn't matter where you are in the house, it can see you and it can hear you, period. It doesn't matter if you're pooping on the toilet with the door closed, it knows. Okay. And it can see you, at your most vulnerable points and all of that, which in itself is scary, as a ghost would be, right? But what I think you're seeing when people talk about seeing a spirit, whether it's a shadow figure or you saw a full bodied apparition or whatever, you're actually seeing a projection of what this thing wants you to see. So you're not actually seeing the entity itself. You're seeing the way it wants you to see it, the way it may remember itself, or just how it wants you to see it. That's why I think ghosts wear clothes. It does not make sense that if a ghost were, in fact, it's the entity itself, why would it wear clothes? Clothes are not alive. Clothes would not have a spiritual being to them. They're fabric. So why would ghosts wear clothes? And the only thing that makes sense to me is that this energy, this hub or whatever you want, this core is projecting an image, and that's what you're seeing. You're not actually seeing the entity itself.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory. I really never heard it explained like that. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, it makes the most sense to me. Again, I get hung up on the ghosts wearing clothes thing. I really do. It's kind of a joke, a running joke in my community. Because I think it makes a good point, right? Like, why would ghosts wear clothes? It doesn't make sense. Does it?
True. Nope, does not.
Now,
So
do you
Williams
think
asked,
that? I was just. Do you think all these energies are earthbound, or some get to leave, or
Oh,
unfinished
sure.
business?
Yeah, I mean, so I believe in God. I believe in the devil. I believe Jesus was who he said he was. I believe in demons. So therefore, I do believe that there is a place for these spirits to go. Um, uh, why are they here? I don't know. Again, I don't know what they are. I really don't know that I believe that ghosts are, like I said, I've said it again and again, but I tend to adopt the idea that they could be people. Are they earthbound as in here for forever? I hope not. That would be a long, lonely place to be, especially when the sun, earth swallows the earth. That's, where do they go then? Are they just going to be floating around in nothingness? Like what's going to happen then? So yeah, I think at some point there's a place for all spirits to go.
Now, what do you make of the phrase from the Bible that all the dead will rise?
I don't know that that's actually in the Bible. Let's make sure. Let's make sure.
Yeah, check that out.
It seems to me that I've read the Bible like 13 times straight through. So it does say that, but in my opinion, that it's talking about the dead people arising. So not necessarily
what I'm seeing is the dead in Christ will rise first. And this has to do with the it's in Thessalonians, but I believe it's talking about the end times, perhaps. It says, I know that there are some misquotes about the dead rising. I don't know that that's actually something that the Bible actually says, but anyway, I do know it does. It does talk about ghosts, though. It does talk about ghosts. I mean, it talks about the Holy Ghost for one thing. It also says, do not, something along the lines of, do not associate with spiritists, and it uses the word spiritists. I always found that interesting. Meaning people who speak with the dead, which could be interpreted as people like me, or mediums, if you believe in that, which I'm not really sold on the idea that mediums are real either. I'm not against it. If there are mediums, I would love to meet one, and I would love to, experience that too. I'm all about experiencing things. You know what I mean? Like, you say that this is what you can do. I'm not going to judge you and tell you you're wrong. Let's sit down and let's have a discussion, and let's show me, you know what I mean? But yeah, and another thing that people get wrong is that it says something about that it's against God to talk to the dead, and that's not true. It just says you shouldn't do it. It doesn't say you can't, or that you will be thrown from God's presence or anything. It doesn't say anything like that. It just says you shouldn't do that. But it doesn't tell you don't do that. It just says you probably shouldn't,
So Blackie wants to know, do you think that a ghost and shadow people are existing in another dimension, and we look like ghost or shadow people to them, possibly?
I suppose that's a possibility. It could also be that, who knows what traumatic, and I mean, I would imagine dying could be traumatic. I'm just going to say, so when you're in this new form or whatever, who knows what that trauma has done to the perception of that being itself. So it is very possible that they see us that way. They don't realize that they're dead and that we're the ghosts. Kind of like that movie, The Others, with Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
I think, and of course, this is all subjective. You know what I mean? We're really just spitballing ideas here. I think that's just as good an explanation as any. I wish I had those answers, Blackie. I wish I did. If I did, I think I would be a favorite amongst paranormal investigators, because I think we all have those questions,
Right. So your job is to get the evidence for that, huh? Or try to.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the best thing that I can do, is find evidence and do my best to present that evidence with as much integrity as possible.
Right. Yeah, I'm all aboard on the energy thing. I mentioned before when my dog died. She died on a Thursday, and Friday night, all I heard was her whining outside my window. And every time I went outside and looked around, I couldn't hear it. I'd come back in the house and the whine would start. It happened all night.
Wow.
And it took my dog to really get me to believe in that there's something else after,
Yeah.
Even
That
with
makes me
pets.
sad.
Yeah. But it's even with pets too. Now, I don't know if that's because we had a connection. She was like very connected to me, would never leave my side,
Right.
very protective. So I don't know if
Yeah.
that's why, because my other dog I buried almost in the same spot and I never heard anything. But I buried her right outside my window. She's like 15 feet from my window. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
And
adds
of course,
something.
you had that dog for however long. You know what your dog sounded like. You knew it was your dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. It's like having you know when it's your kid crying out of a group of crying kids. You know which one is yours. It's sort of the same sort of situation.
Yeah, and I live out in the middle of the woods, and I kept looking out. That's what at first I thought it was another dog at my dog's grave, and she didn't
Right.
have any other dogs she hung out with, but she knew the other dogs around. But it wasn't that. And then I had my roommate come upstairs, sit down and listen, and he couldn't hear it. And I
Right.
was right next to him, and I could hear it clear as day.
Wow.
So right then
Wow.
I
So
knew.
it was meant for you.
Yeah, I knew right then it was her.
Yeah.
But just that one night, her energy was here, and I went outside and I knelt down. I couldn't smell, I couldn't feel anything. It was just an energy that I was
Right.
hearing. I just couldn't. I couldn't feel it or smell anything. So
Yeah. I'd like to, if I could, and I know it's not my show, but one thing that we like to do over there in the community is if you have a question, because there's such a group of text, it's hard to keep up with who's asking a question and who isn't and stuff. If you put a capital Q with a period in front of your question, it could help you guys filter out which ones are questions and stuff.
Yes.
That's just something that we like to do. So I don't know if that would help you guys out. I know that there's somebody here asking something about.
Well,
I've seen a couple of different. Go ahead.
Sorry, Jimmy. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
There was a question he asked way earlier, and I forgot to ask it, so I want to make sure I get that. Our friend William, he asked what the difference is, or what do you believe in the concept of active versus residual hauntings?
Sure. Yeah. So I think it comes along with the idea of something being so traumatic that maybe people are stuck reliving whatever over and over and over again. There's also the idea of stone tape theory, right? Which I don't know. I know what that means. Basically, limestone and stuff like that. If there's a lot of limestone around, it can record events in time. There's really nothing to suggest that that's actually true. But yeah, I think that there most likely are people who have had some sort of seriously traumatic event, and they can't get out of that loop for some reason, whatever that is. I don't know. And so they don't see you. They don't know you're even there. It's just something that replays every now and then. And then you have active, which they are aware of you. They're aware, they're intelligent, and they know that you're around. Now, why does that happen? Again, I don't know, but I do believe that it's a reasonable thing to think that there are people who somehow get stuck in some sort of loop for whatever reason, or maybe again it could just be something that's been recorded in a stitch in time somehow.
No, I definitely agree with that. With the tragic deaths, when they're unexpected, some of those people really wouldn't know that they were dead.
Right.
Right. So I could see that keeping them around, but the ones that go peacefully are probably the ones that are gone within a couple days.
Right.
Geez, so how many investigations have you done? I know it's fairly new.
Yeah. So I would honestly, I think I've only three investigations, and the first ever investigation was the Carmel, Maine investigation. That was the first one I'd ever done. And the reason, and I did it that way, like on purpose, right? Because one of the things that motivated me to go and do was the fact that I would be in, like, I would be on YouTube and I would see some sort of event or some sort of evidence that someone had presented that I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And I'd read the comments, and you'd have people who were debunking it, which is natural. That's what's going to happen. But then you'd have these people who were saying things like, well, how would you know? You weren't even there. You never went to this. You never went and did anything, blah, 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 So one of the things I wanted to get around was that argument, saying that how would I know? I never went and did, you know what I mean? So, but I also wanted to be relatable in the sense of, a lot of us that are watching YouTube looking for evidence of the paranormal are not paranormal investigators. We just enjoy it, right? But I think a lot of us would love to go and do that. There are plenty of people who watch the show. In a way, they're living vicariously through the show. Oh, I wish I had time to go and do a paranormal investigation or whatever. So I wanted to be relatable to the viewer in the sense of, I was like them. I was on one side of the screen seeking answers. And then one day I just decided to go and look for those answers in person rather than, on the internet or on TV.
So there was a question way back up to you again, and I want to make sure I don't miss them. Wanted to know what your thoughts are on Ouija boards.
The Ouija board. So one time, I have a Ouija board. It's a wooden one. I bought it off eBay. It was haunted. It was a haunted Ouija board. I paid $127 for this thing because I got caught in the trap of buying haunted objects off of eBay. I just did it one time. But at the very least, I was like, if it's not haunted, it's a super cool Ouija board. It's a cool, it's an interesting speaking piece or something like that, because I didn't want just the Milton Bradley Ouija board, I wanted something that was unique. And I was sitting down one day, and this was during the time that I was in a band. And one thing that I learned about when I was in a band, I play the drums, and I play a lot of instruments, but in this band, I was playing the drums. And I noticed that I would go into a hypnotic sort of meditated state. The song would begin, and then all of a sudden the song was over. I got through it through meditation, right? I just went into this meditative state. So I was very exercised on getting into that state of mind. And I had sat around with this Ouija board plenty of times with other people. Nothing ever happened, never felt anything. And if a Ouija board is going to work, it should work while you're alone too. There's no reason why you have to have more than one person. If they work, you should be able to do it alone. So I sat down, I put it on my lap because I read that the more physical contact you have with the Ouija board, the better. And I put my fingers on the planchette, just barely touching, and I began to put myself into that meditated state. And I felt on my arms static electricity. And the hair on my arm started coming, like when you put a balloon over your arm, how it pulls the hair up. That's what was happening. It wasn't goosebumps. I felt static over my arms. And I was like, I'm good. I'm good. So that's my experience with the Ouija board, where I was like, I don't know if I want to continue doing this. I think it's, are they real? I don't know. again, you're going to get a lot of that from me because I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm not going to make up a reason why they are or why they aren't or whatever. If I don't know the answer, I'd rather just say I don't know. That happened to me. I don't know what that was. I know that it wasn't goosebumps, that there was actually static happening. And who knows what would have happened if I continued. Maybe I would have made contact with something. That would have been insane if that had happened. But yeah, I think it's probably just as reasonable a tool to use as the spirit box. They're essentially the same thing, you know. Either way, they're contacting the dead, supposedly, if they are. And again, I don't really put in a whole lot of faith into the spirit box itself either. I've had some interesting things happen with it, however, but at the same time, you know, there are a lot of false positives that come out of using equipment like that.
Well, there goes my theory on the Ouija board, because I always thought it was the collective thought and energy of a group of people that got it to work.
Yeah. Well, you know, and again, don't take my word for it. You know, I could have just been, I could be mistaken. You know, I mean, I am not infallible. I could have made a mistake, and maybe I imagined things. You know, I mean, who knows? I would like to believe that I didn't. You know, and I mean, I saw my arm hair go up, so it's you know, I would definitely try it again. You know, as I think I would rather have somebody else around with me. That way, if I'm damned to hell, so are they. You know, I'm not in it alone.
Right.
Taking you with me, by God.
I'm taking you with me.
Are there any more questions out there, Dave?
Nope. So I just asked, you know, if I missed your question, please ask again. And nobody's asked anything. So there's a lot of chat about the Ouija board going on, but no questions so far.
So how many are in your research group, Jimmy?
In the paranormal research unit, I believe. Let's see here, because I'm like the newest member of that group, and we haven't all gone out together yet. I know I think there's 5 or 6 of us in the main group. That's Alpha, and then in the I believe the second group is called Beta. There's I think 4 or 5 in that group too, and we're spread out. Mostly we're in the Midwest. And the leader of the group, Matt Benton, he's in the Marines. He's actually in California because that's where he's stationed. But he's going to be deployed soon for the next 6 months. And then once he's out of that, then he'll be coming back towards the Midwest. And I'm not sure really when we're going to start the next documentary. Like I said, I know it's in pre-production, but it's going to be a fun experiment. It's going to be a fun experiment. I wish I could tell you a little bit more about that, but he's definitely asked me to keep that on the down low. So, but it will not be like anything you guys have ever seen before. I can tell you that.
So,
have they come across any notable evidence?
I'm sorry, you were cutting out. Could you say it again?
Did you get that? I was just wondering, has anybody in your group come across any good evidence or notable evidence?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Evil on Earth, the documentary that's just released with those guys, it's about the Monroe House, which is in Indiana. And it's really intriguing, some of the stuff that they captured, EVPs that they captured, disembodied voices that were heard, intelligent responses, like something about like I think the guy asked, like, you know, if you're in here, can you let me know? And you hear like that. I mean, it's that profound. Yeah, that documentary is coming out really soon, And I highly suggest anybody who enjoys a good documentary with legit evidence, and this isn't stuff that, like, they're not out. Again, we're researchers. We're looking for the truth. We're not ghost hunters. There's a difference, between a paranormal investigator and researcher and a ghost hunter. So anything that we present or that they present in that documentary is something that they full on actually believe is legitimate, and some of it is quite compelling. Really interesting things happen, almost Blair Witch in a way.
Wow.
And is that a pretty well-known place?
The Monroe House, yeah. It was pretty hot, just especially even just this last year. I'm trying to remember the name of the town it's in. But anyway, it's on Monroe Street. That's why they call it the Monroe House. And it's one of those houses. It's like, oh, well, we were renovating it and we hired people to come in and renovate. Every single person that we've hired left because they were experiencing things. And when questioning those people about that, they were either like, we don't want to talk about that. Like, we don't want anything to do with any of this. Or they were, you could tell that they were genuinely like scared, or they had something disturbed them enough to where they had to leave. And you always hear stories about stuff like that, right? Like, that's a common thread in paranormal is that, we were renovating the house and these people left and they never come back. And, it seems to be kind of a tongue in cheek kind of thing, but with this house, it's real. There were a lot of rituals. We know that there were some rituals that were done in that house. Actually, there was a guy who lived in that house and openly did rituals there. That was able to be confirmed that stuff took place there. And there's just, there's a lot of history to that place. And the people who own the place, I've never met them, but I trust Matt, the leader of the group. And, he is impressionable to a degree, but I think every time I see the people speaking on camera, the people who own the house, whenever they're shown evidence, you can tell that they're mind blown, and you can also, I would tend to believe that I'm pretty good at gauging people. I was taught to observe. I remember when I was young and I would be all worried about this drama or that in my teenage years, or even in my younger elementary school years, this drama, that drama, this person said this person said that. I remember my dad saying, you'd get along a lot better if you would just shut up and pay attention. You just watch people. You'll start to learn more about people that way than you will worried about all these things that you're worried about. So through that, I think I learned a lot about observation. And when I gauge these people, I don't get that they're trying to put one over on anybody. I think they actually have something going on and they don't know why, and they don't, as far as I know, I don't know that they make any money, with this story at all. I don't know. I don't know that they don't either. I'm just saying, as far as I know, they're not motivated monetarily, as far as I can tell.
So Rusty William is asking, are you familiar with the Myrtles Plantation or the Crescent Hotel? And if so, what are your thoughts on those?
I feel like I've heard of the Myrtles Plantation. I might have to be refreshed with it to know if I have heard of it. I've been interested in this stuff so long that stories kind of bleed together or whatever, so it's possible that I know what you're talking about, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Hey, do do you say a prayer before you enter these investigations, or any type of ritual you do to protect yourself?
I just ask that I'm protected. I just ask for, uh, for the presence. I believe in guardian angels for one thing, which I didn't used to until I had some sort of interaction. So I do say things like, please protect me and keep me under your light while I'm here, stuff like that. But I don't. It's more of an internal thing. I'm not saying it out loud or anything like that. I'm just kind of collecting myself and making sure that I've,
Right. So you
I'm asking.
you believe you'll be protected.
Yeah, I mean, I put my faith in that. Yeah, that I'll be all right. That nothing's going to attach to me or whatever. If again, since I'm so new, there's a lot of experiences that I haven't had and don't know whether or not I put any stock into it at all. But it's one of those things where when I feel like I'm doing something spiritually dangerous, I absolutely, ask to be protected.
Very good.
Right. A good idea.
Sure.
Because like you said, we really don't know what these things are.
Right. Yeah. And what they're capable of, I mean, I've seen some really interesting things, man, like that I do believe have some sort of substance to them. I've seen people, it was again, it's video through the leader Matt showed me a video of a possession, and I'm like, man, if this guy is acting, he doesn't belong in a paranormal research unit. He belongs in Hollywood. Like, it was, I mean, I'm talking drool just coming out of his face, and it's just hanging there, and he's talking, and it's just the most creepy shit I've ever seen him. And I'm not talking like Annalise McHale or The Exorcist, the Reagan. I'm not talking like that kind of vibe. It was just creepy and strange, and it's like, man, if that's fake, that dude deserves an Oscar. Like, so I definitely think that there are dangers out there. There definitely, I think that's, again, because I believe in demons, I believe in the devil, I believe in that. And as I said, it's rare for those things for you to encounter them, but I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah, I've always wondered about those possessions, if they allowed them in or if the demon took over, found somebody weak and just took them over.
It doesn't just happen abruptly like that. And typically demonic possession happens in stages, right? Like it starts through oppression, and it messes with your psyche. I think demons, demons are more apt to mess with you in ways that are not it is paranormal, but it doesn't seem in the sense of like the way that we perceive paranormal. They mess with your psyche. They make you believe that you are worthless, that no one loves you. They make you believe all of these. They're feeding into. We all have that voice that beats us up every day inside. Our inner monologue that beats us up. We all deal with that, and I think demons exploit that. They exploit that at first, and I mean, yeah, it doesn't just happen all at once. Now, when it's something like what I was seeing here, I don't even know that it was necessarily a demon. It was some sort of entity. It called itself Seven, and it was the creepiest. It was creepy, bro. It was insane, and it's actually you get to see some of that in the Evil Unearthed documentary, again, which I'm not in that documentary. I'm not really trying to plug it over. No, it's just that's the group that I'm a part of now, and this guy worked really hard on putting this thing together, and it's really phenomenal. But this particular thing that they showed in there was it stuck with me. It stuck with me. Really strange.
Is there any history to that name 7?
Yeah, so there are other groups out there who have claimed to come across entities that call themselves numbers. For one thing, I don't, I mean, there's a lot of, again, subjective, we're spitballing here, but like for some reason, there's like this idea that if you know the name of whatever entity or whatever, if it's a demon, that somehow renders it powerless. That doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know if that's true, but it is interesting to hear people who don't know each other, who aren't even who aren't even in the same state. They're not, and they're talking about encountering some sort of entity that refers to itself as a number. That I find interesting. And what does that number? What does that signify? What you're 6 of what? You're 7 of what? What is that? And I know that this 7 entity actually caused them trouble. Matt told me that he had his keys. He had, I think he had just bought this car, and he had the kind of keys that when you get close to the car, your car unlocks and all that stuff. It's it's like a smart. It knows when the key to the car is close to it, and it will unlock, and it's got all these automated features. he had just got this car, and he set the keys down on his bed. This was after encountering this 7. He heard the keys scrape the wall and then scrape from the inside of the wall. He could hear his keys scraping the inside of the wall and slam somewhere, and then that just stopped, and his keys were not on the bed anymore.
Wow.
That's pretty intense, and that's a very I mean, that's one of those claims that if I were to hear somebody else that I didn't know that I trust saying it inside my head, I would be like, you're full of it, right? Like stuff like that doesn't happen. But this guy's a logical thinker, right? I mean, he put his keys on the bed. How is it that the next time you encounter your keys, you're hearing them scraping up the inside of your wall, and now you can't find your keys anymore? Yeah, there and there's a few other stories that I'm sure I will hear. They're kind of I'm still so new that I don't think that they're not quite comfortable enough with telling me all of the stories about this 7 entity. I can't remember the name of the place that they were at either. It was another famous house in town, but it's since been destroyed. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I ever want to encounter something like that, but at the same time, like there's this part of me that kind of does, I mean, I don't want to lose my keys. Gosh, I hate that.
Yeah.
But there's just this part of me that just can't help but be like, oh, wouldn't that be cool? And then of course it happens to me, and I'm like, that wasn't cool at all, But yeah, it's very intriguing.
You're right.
Very interesting.
Be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
David
Right.
Sear is in the chat right now, and
Yeah,
David
that's
Sear is
interesting.
actually. I'm sorry. I was just announcing that David Sear is in the. David Sear's in the chat. David is he's in the documentary. He is the guy that I mentioned before that was out digging holes looking for somebody that, So everybody, hello, David Sear.
Oh.
Thanks for jumping in with us, David. I appreciate you. He's one of he's become a really great friend of mine over this.
He's not
this whole thing. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, he's not too far from me. I'm only a few towns away from Carmel.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, but
Yeah. And
it's interesting with the wall thing there you were talking about. My buddy, his landlord, who also lived in the house, the landlord passed away, and his cat disappeared, and they heard the cat in the walls. Like each night, they kept hearing this cat. And then in-laws came in to stay there, and they saw the old man who had passed away a couple weeks earlier. They saw him sitting down in his favorite chair watching TV late one night.
Hmm.
And the cat, there ended up being a mysterious fire in this house, actually, a couple of them. Electricity was shut off, lights were going on and off, everyone had moved out. And then one of the neighbors saw the cat sitting in the window, and an hour or two later, the place burned down.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
But when the guy passed away, his cat went missing about a week later because a friend of mine was taking care of it. It just disappeared, but they kept hearing it in the walls. So my buddy was tearing apart walls trying to get the cat, and they could never find it, but they could hear it scratching on the inside of the wall at
Huh.
night. And what they realized is the cat was dead. And
Wow.
then after that last fire, the fire inspector came in and saw cat tracks going across the kitchen counter in the ash, and it went right through the wall into the bathroom. The tracks did. He even
Huh.
said one of the tracks was only a half track at the wall. So we looked
Wow.
into the bathroom on the other side, and sure enough, the cat came out through the wall. The fire inspector, the fireman there, he ended up writing a big story about it, went and got a lot of witness accounts. He had heard all the stories, he had just never seen anything until he saw those cat tracks.
Right. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it
insane.
was interesting. But that guy stuck around. Like he wasn't gone within a few days. His name was Fred, I remember that. But I
Hmm.
know it was a few weeks later, maybe a month or so later, when my buddy's in-laws moved in, and one of the women that was staying there got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and saw the old man sitting in his chair watching TV.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
interesting.
And that makes me wonder, was that a residual, going back to that, like, right? That's what he liked to do, was sit around, and that's all he did for his last few years of life, right? Was sit around and watch TV. Yeah.
Right.
So maybe
Right.
he was still stuck there, until it was time for him to go wherever it was he was meant to be.
Right. And what's
I
funny
find,
is he turned and looked at the woman that was going to the bathroom. They looked
oh,
right at each other. It freaked her
okay.
out. She never stayed there again.
Hmm. So he was aware. Then it wasn't residual at that point. It was just something that he was used to doing, and he was hanging out.
He was
Huh.
hanging out. Now his most prized possession was that house. He
Right.
loved that house, and
Right.
I don't know if that's what it was. We always talked about that, me and my buddy, why he stayed there. You know.
Well, yeah, he loved that home. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't,
Because you do hear that a lot of ghosts that don't leave and they don't want you to touch their house, change
right.
anything, or that's got to be
Hmm.
an incredibly strong bond to keep you
Sure.
earthbound for that, you know?
I'm sure it's even deeper than that, though. Maybe
Yeah,
I don't think that materialistic possessions would be what would be the only thing that keeps you here, because I mean, let's face it, materialistic, that's what it is, right? Like, it all has a shelf life. All of everything does, right? So something that you can't carry with you or take with you when you pass on, wherever it is that you're meant to go. Perhaps there is an anchor there. I'm sure there is, but there are probably other things within that person's life that are keeping them around. I would assume. I would assume. I don't know. I'm just, again, spitballing.
Right. Yeah, like you said, we really don't know because
Mm,
I've always wondered that too. Why certain ghosts will stick around just to protect a house. But it seems like when the house is destroyed, they're gone.
right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true too. The house that I live in now, there was a house that was here before that became infested with termites, and they tore it down eventually. But that house was built. It was old enough that there was a soldier from the Civil War that came home to to that house, and he died there. And my mom and my uncle told me stories when I was growing up. Excuse me, about seeing a man in a northern uh you had the south and you had the north. This guy was in a northern uniform, and there used to be a balcony that went outside of my uncle's. There used to be a door, and there was a balcony out there, but that had been taken down, and now there were just windows there. And my uncle told me he woke up one night and he could see the man standing on the other side of the window looking in, but there was no balcony there, and there hadn't been for years and years and years at this point, you know. And then once they said that once they tore that house down, that they stopped having experiences like that. But that story that I told you about hearing someone open the door and walking through the house, that was a story that my mom had told me had happened to her at that old house. Now, I don't know if that entity or if whatever that was the same thing. I don't know. But it is interesting that once the place is gone, that typically whatever it is that was there seems to disappear with that. At least that seems to be a common narrative, in ghost stories.
And are
So
they
real quick,
mostly stone buildings?
Stone buildings.
Yes. Are they mostly stone buildings this happens to, or do you know, or
Oh
are
no,
there
no. I
some
think
within wood buildings?
I think a haunting can happen. It doesn't even necessarily have to be in a building, I mean, look at Gettysburg, right? People talk about Gettysburg and how haunted it is.
Right.
That's a war field. Yeah, I don't think it doesn't make sense to me that a spirit would be bound to one place anyway. I think spirits can come and go as they please, Pop. I mean, that's what makes sense to me. I don't know, but it just makes sense that a spirit wouldn't necessarily be bound to a place just because it died there. Or why do they, why are ghosts supposed to be hanging around cemeteries? That doesn't make sense either, right? Like, it's like, okay, that's where their dead body is and stuff, but like, why would you hang around in a cemetery? I mean, you could. I don't think you're bound to that place. I think you probably do have some area of wandering aimlessly. Like spirits could probably come and go. Who knows? Who knows? Especially because you can't see it.
Right. Now these
Like, go ahead.
do you think these attachments that the spirits have are more emotional than anything?
That's a good question. Yeah, emotions drive us to do things that we would normally never do, don't they? Yeah.
And they're
Emotions
powerful.
emotions dictate our actions in a lot of ways, no matter how much we would try to not allow that. Sometimes it's just our human nature to allow an emotion to dictate our next action, which it can be very toxic, or it can be beautiful. It can be sad. It can be angry, any number of things. So, yeah, I don't think that when we die, our emotions die with us. I think emotions are part of who we are as an entity ourselves, right? Like the way that I look at it is this is just some sort of vessel, right? That my spirit inhabits. But it's that spirit that feels emotion, and it feels it, and through emotion it learns, right? So yeah, I think that when we pass on, our emotions don't just fizzle out. You know, we still know what love is, we still know what fear is, happy, sad, all that stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's amazing to me how long, like you can go back to the Egyptians and, they revered death and they knew there was something after death.
Mm.
They were around a lot longer than we were too, so they may have figured a little bit more of this out.
Yeah, yeah. The Egyptians, that's an interesting group. And I also don't know that, and this is kind of completely sort of out of left field. I don't know that. I think that it's possible that there are civilizations older than what we know. I mean, I'm talking way older, way, way older, Um, there's a guy, Graham Hancock, who put out a really good documentary called Ancient Apocalypse. He's one of the advocates for the idea of an ancient civilization. A guy named Robert Schoch. He does a lot of work in Egypt. Learned a lot about the Sphinx. Was actually actively shut down by the Egyptian government because of some things that he had discovered. And yeah, I find all of that extremely intriguing. Extremely intriguing. Like Homo sapien, homos, like just the Homo erect or Homo, the what's the word? There are all kinds of different species of human dating back 250,000 years ago. Okay. Why is it that in the last 6,000 years that we became sentient and started writing books and started writing stuff and started economy and community and all that? That doesn't make sense to me. Like if we've been around for thousands upon thousands, more than 10,000, 12,000, 16,000 Göbekli Tepe or whatever is said to be, I'm willing to bet it goes back even further than that. I don't believe that just all of a sudden in the last 6,000 to 10,000 years we just woke up. I mean, and if we did, why? What caused that to happen?
You're right. No,
Sorry,
I
again, I
definitely
know that's
agree with
completely
that
off.
too.
It's completely out of left field, and I
No,
apologize. I know that's not the subject, but
well, we can leave off with that, but I definitely agree. We've been on this earth for a long time. I just think we go through cycles of disasters, and we have to start over and keep starting over.
And think about this,
So
right? Let's say a world cataclysmic event happens, right? Let's say that happens to us. Well, most of our records dating for the past 30 years are where? They're on a hard
digital.
drive, right?
Right.
And now let's say 2,000 years from now, someone finds a hard drive. They're not going to be able to open that. They're not going to be able to read that. They're not going to be able to take a floppy disk and put it in a drive and know, you know what I mean? Like there's going to be a lot of history lost if something like that were to happen. It's too bad we don't etch things in stone anymore, although I don't want that job. That'd be awful.
Right. Well, there was a guy etching stuff in ceramic and burying it in the ground. Music, as much as he can put down, he's doing it.
That's interesting.
So that should be interesting. Well, I'd like to have you back on after your next documentary.
Sure.
I really enjoyed your first one. I definitely recommend people going to your channel and looking up the 4-part documentary. I think you did a great job on it.
Thank you. Yeah, and like I said, once we're done here, yeah, I'll be back over there streaming it live again. So if anybody wants to come over to watch it, it'll all 4 parts are playing one after the other. And You can also watch them individually if you wanted to. They're in a playlist on my channel, but it's only going to be available for the rest of the week. After that, like I said, it's going to be going to the distributor will be in control of it. So yeah,
Okay.
we'll be over there hanging out, and a lot of people that are in chat over here have come over from my side of YouTube to kind of help support. And if you've had, I've noticed your chat is very lovely, and I think they would fit right in with the people that hang out on my side of YouTube as well.
Well, thank you for coming on, Jimmy.
Well,
It's been
I
very
definitely-
interesting show.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Don, for having me. And next time, maybe Victoria will be able to hang out. Like she said, she wants to ask me some questions, and I'm happy to come back whenever you guys would like to have me come back.
Very good. Very good.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm sure she'd have a bunch of questions for you too. So,
Right.
all right. Well, no more questions on the chat, Dave. Are we all good?
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone in the chat.
Thank you, Diane.
Definitely
Thank you.
appreciate the support. Yeah, so it was a good show. I enjoyed that. I don't know if people were expecting more about getting in depth about making the documentary, but I think that's important too. You got to stay skeptical in any research, really.
Yeah, and it's important to we are all looking for the truth, and there are reasons that are very close to us emotionally that are sending us looking for that truth. And it is, I think, the responsibility of all true paranormal researchers to only provide you with the truth. And when you're looking for things yourself, the best that we can do as fighting that fight is to help you learn what to look for when looking for deception, or being aware that deception is around, because it's ever present. So that's what our message is really about, is just education.
Well said.
Yeah, well said. Right. All right. Well, thank you, Jimmy. We're going to wrap it up here. And thank you, Dave. And
You're very welcome, Don.
Yeah, thanks to Chad. Very much appreciating everyone showing up. And I think that should do it. So you guys have a great night. I think Victoria is behind the scenes now, so she should be able to shut everything down. But you guys have a great night, and we'll see you next Saturday.
Have a good night.
All right,
Night,
good night,
footers.
guys.